Welcome to today's video. I hope you're doing well. My name is Matthew, and yes, I am a concerned citizen. Sorry for the background noise. You have someone revving their car. It's Friday, so that happens in my neighborhood. And I'm not wearing my contacts, so everything looks like a blur. So if I go cross-eyed, that's the reason why. I have an eye infection, trying to treat it. TMI maybe. Maybe you don't want to know that. You're like, ew. So I wanted to record this video because I don't want individuals to get the wrong impression about my intentions, right? I am not perfect. I'm going to say things out of frustration. And a lot of my frustration stems from seeing people celebrate other people's suffering. And I really hate injustice. And sometimes my comments can be broad in their nature, but I'm really focused on individuals who get the joy out of watching others suffer, who don't care about other people suffering as long as they're succeeding, and they only care about themselves and their own greed. So I have done a few videos. I've seen comments. I've commented on things, right? I have hit like on individuals who are fighting back, right? Especially against hate. And some of the individuals who comment in my videos, I see them like trying to maybe argue their point or getting the wrong impression of what my intentions are, right? So most recently, I posted a video about my disgust over the Supreme Court deciding to strip away the Voting Rights Act. Because to be honest, I have not seen any evidence that us as a nation have overcome the racism in this country. Now, am I saying that all Republicans are racist? No. But we can't deny that there's racism in this country, right? We can't deny that we are also in a system that wants to take advantage of the middle class and working class individuals, regardless of race. So it's unfortunate that marginalized individuals, and I include individuals who don't have a lot of money, don't have opportunities of other individuals who feel left out as marginalized, are the ones that are attacked just because we're easy targets. And some people celebrate that, and I think it's misguided because out of desperation in some aspects, and we'll go into that deeper. But I've really tried to take a step back and understand where individuals are coming from. I've had individuals treat me terrible in my past. I've had someone in my youth try to kill me. And instead of being angry about it, instead of being upset and condemning them and letting my life be filled with hatred, I decided that because I was so young and I really didn't know, but then I learned about it, to understand what their life experience was. How does a person get into that mental state? And what I discovered was lots of suffering. Does that mean that they get a free pass? No. But it allows me to empathize a little bit more with their situation. I am human. I make mistakes. And I would want room for growth. I would want room to be able to show that I did the work. And I'm trying to instill that in other individuals. So when you see me make a broad comment, I'm talking about the actions of individuals. I'm condemning the hate. I'm condemning the villainization and individuals taking advantage of people because they can, not because of any other reason than just pure enjoyment and greed. So I don't hate you because you're a Republican. I don't hate you because you're MAGA, right? I don't understand for individuals why you voted for Donald Trump, but I'm trying to empathize, not to try to get myself to convince myself that Donald Trump is a good person. That will never change. I see who he is. And not to convince myself that politicians care about us, because they are human and they are even just as susceptible, or even more so, to the power of greed, right? So in this video, I would like an opportunity to discuss comments that I've received and just give the message that I don't hate you. I don't. I don't know you, and I would like to get to know you. When I go out every day in the streets and I interact with people, in fact, most of it's pretty cordial. I have had a few experiences with people treating me badly, and most times when I discover and get to learn about them, when I have that opportunity, I discover that they've had a lot of bad life experiences, just like I said in the past, in this introduction to this video. So, excuse me, as we kind of talk, I'm going to try to record this and finally post it. I get so nervous about being misinterpreted and misunderstood, but I want this to be an open dialogue. I want this to be a safe space for us to learn and grow. So let's talk about the first comment that I receive. And as I expressed my frustration and concern with the Supreme Court decision stripping away the Voting Rights Act in Section 2, I was really frustrated to see Black Americans losing their voice in this country. Already after seeing the history that they had with repeated abuses and just attacks against them. And would be a lie to say that there's not racism in this country. There is. But in order for us to really pursue the vision of this country is to continuously improve, continuously to innovate and do better. And it was really discouraging and heartbreaking to see Black Americans lose their voice. Some people argued that we shouldn't allow gerrymandering or districting based on race. But the unfortunate matter is that what the Supreme Court proved with their ruling after the stripping away of the Section 2 was that we need laws like this. Because immediately Republicans went about and stripped away or tried to strip away the voices of Black Americans in this country. And everyone should be disgusted by that. Because if they're going to attack the most vulnerable, meaning that individuals who don't have power, what are they going to do for everyone else? And how they treat someone else is an indication of how they're going to treat you. Okay? So I think that's very important to keep in mind. So I saw comments say when I was upset about this in the Virginia Supreme Court decision stopping the Democrats from combating gerrymandering in other states, that someone indicated, Matthew, I live in Massachusetts. What do you think about that? And I think what they're trying to say is that they live in a state where it's all Democratic control. They have no representation. Now, I also want to point out, and this is not to try to counter and disregard your point of view, that we have many states that are all red. And I think what happens in these states, whether they be all blue, all red, is that when you have a political party that feels that they're immune to losing their power in these states, they become stagnant in regards to policies that actually help the electorate. There's nothing to say that they're going to be removed from power. You see career politicians just continuously being voted for and not really doing much. So I think that is a concern, and I understand where you're coming from in your state, that you're probably not getting a lot because those politicians feel there's not much that they really need to do to satisfy the electorate. In fact, sometimes even in employees will, like in jobs, employees will become a little stagnant, like going, no, I'm getting paid for everything. Why do all the extra work to innovate and do those extra steps when I'm not getting anything extra out of it? And that's what's happening to our politicians. But the other unfortunate truth, and this counts for all blue areas and all red areas, is that as you become the party in power and other people acknowledge that, especially the rich, especially corporations in other countries, they're going to try to persuade you. And this is where corruption runs prevalent. And people continuously vote out of loyalty to their party, these politicians, and they're getting paid off to push policies and shut you up and say, we can't do that. It's going to take too much work. You guys are asking for too much. You're being unreasonable. And this is why I think that you see many politicians, despite voters saying, I don't want a data center. I don't want this place here. I'm concerned about the environment, my community. I'm concerned about the water. Despite all that opposition, the local elected officials will ignore them and still build these data centers, still allow these companies to contaminate and not introduce regulations that restrict them. Why? Because they feel comfortable. They feel like they are not going to lose their spot. And this is what happens when you don't have a political environment that's competitive. Now, let me point out something that needs to be pointed out here. Right now, in my opinion, the Republican Party is obviously very corrupt. Everyone has given up any morality or any allegiance to their electorate and the Constitution, all in the name of kissing ass to Donald Trump and their own greed, to satisfying their corporate donors, to satisfying whatever other country or any individual that is going to give them the power and money that they want. So they're scratching each other's backs, meanwhile going, who cares about the voters? So I hear you. To another point, though, I do want to point out that right now, as you're a Republican in that state, and by the way, not ignoring, I just gave a clear example where I do see problems. Democrats and Republican equally can be infiltrated. Right now, definitely Republicans are showing it, and we're going to go into a little bit Democrats and their corruption. And I'm a registered Democrat. But the second point that I have here is right now the Republicans control the Supreme Court with the 6 conservative justices over the 3 more liberal justices. They control Congress, and they're not getting anything done. We had the longest shutdown in history, and we have them pushing policies that just appease Trump and do nothing for the American people. In fact, they pushed the big beautiful bill, which is cutting health insurance, Medicaid, and Medicare for the American people, giving tax cuts to the rich. What is that about? And then they're in control of the presidency with Donald Trump, someone who proved that if somebody wanted to, as president, raise prices on gas, wanted to influence and increase your prices, could do so. Now, in the past, in Trump's first presidency and also during Biden, I didn't completely blame Trump in his first presidency and Biden because of the increased gas prices and expenditures. Why? Because one, Trump was at the tail end of, the introduction of COVID. Biden was at the tail end of dealing with COVID. And we also had economic catastrophes happening around the world, wars and things like that with other countries, fighting amongst themselves, and just Russia and Ukraine that just drove up cost. But here, Trump intentionally did something that increased prices. And that is something rare that I was like, oh my gosh, you're like, hold the phone. I can increase prices. I can show you how a president can increase prices. I was like, oh, I guess you proved us wrong. Yeah, he can. If you do something like this. And then my last point in regards to the concern about you're in a blue state, you have no representation, is I want us to also be mindful that as Black Americans are losing their voice, that the timing is important as well. To say, look at me, I deserve this, as individuals are suffering and being targeted, is a little bit poor timing. I'm not saying that you should be completely ignored, but what I'm saying is right now, there's an urgency that we need to stand by Black Americans right now and support them. Because when one of us are attacked, one of us are treated like this, it's only a matter of time. Now, that shouldn't be the only reason, and that shouldn't be the main justification of why we do this, right? We should do it because it's the right thing to do, right? And that's the most important thing to keep in mind, okay? Now, there's this notion that a lot of people fall into the area of, supporting politicians And right now, the Republicans just taking away the Voting Rights Act. I just want to point out one story before I go into my next comment. In Delaware, a judge ruled that entities such as corporations, right, and I believe others, have the right to vote, even though they're actually not people. Now, what's the irony here is at the same time that you have a government dehumanizing people, such as immigrants, such as Black Americans, taking away their voice, trans people attacking them, women reversing rights, attacking the poor, you're going to say that an entity which is not a person, not even a living thing, has a right to vote. How is that fair? As you're attacking actually people who are alive and have the right to live their life the way they want. It's just completely ass backwards. And right now, we have people who are convinced that people who don't have power, right, are the reason for your pain and suffering. But you've watched how easy it has been for this government to villainize trans individuals, how easy it has been for them to get in the favor of the Supreme Court to do their political bidding and attack Black Americans. If these marginalized groups were really responsible for your suffering, don't you think that they'd be much more stronger and able to combat the onslaught that they're experiencing? But they aren't. It's a lie. They have been attacked. They have been made to be the enemy only because it's easy. And we believe in these politicians who weaponize, right, and use other people against us because they're easy targets for us. Because nobody wants to target the rich, the powerful, because we know it's a tough battle. So we'd rather go for the easy way out and blame people who are not responsible. Immigrants and others. I just think that's an important thing to know as we kind of think about like us uniting together. Like when people villainize and say, the reason why you can't have things is because look at these other people who are Republicans. Well, they've been tricked just like on the Democratic side, some of us have been tricked. Now, definitely Republicans have been tricking them and selling them that stuff out of desperation. Because you're told, if you're a supporter of Trump, that your suffering is temporary, or you're just enjoying the suffering of others because you feel like as other people have it worse than you, you feel elevated. It's a trick, right? So out of desperation, they've taken advantage of people, some of those individuals who felt like they had no option because the Republican establishment, the Democratic establishment really didn't do much for them. And they moved into the arms, ran into the arms of someone like Trump. Someone like Trump who's a businessman, who is the exact thing that we're disgusted by as we see Amazon and other companies such as, Meta, Google, right? CBS, the Paramount, Skydance, right? Just name a few. Treat their workers like crap. And try to lobby and stop politicians from increasing the minimum wage, from making sure that they have regulation which protects us. That's the person you ran into the arms of. Because Donald Trump is a businessman. And a businessman is going to behave, a certain way. He cannot change, who he is. And I'm not giving Trump an excuse, by the way. But we need to recognize who he is. He's about personal gain. That's what a company is about. Making money, hurting the workers, cutting benefits, cutting jobs. It's the nature of the beast, right? That's what our capitalist system is. It needs to do better and consume more than it ever did before. It's unattainable. It's gorging on wealth and power. Meanwhile, someone has to suffer, and we're the individuals that are suffering. So second comment is like, hey, Matthew, you talk about Republicans and what they're doing wrong a lot, and you target them, but you never talk about Democrats. Well, let me address first, there are lots of things that Republicans are doing wrong. And the Republican corruption is very clear. But I will say this, and this is not giving credit to Trump or the Republicans, but during a time like this, when there's such pure corruption and so many Americans are being targeted and the most vulnerable are losing. As an American, as somebody who's just an everyday citizen, you look to the opposition, the Democratic Party, the ones that I'm registered with as a Democrat myself. And as you're looking at them, trying to assess if they're going to help, if they're fighting for you, you get to notice some things in this environment that are pretty clear. Because corruption is everywhere, but the lens and that false facade, the smoke and mirrors, are gone on both sides. And I have seen individuals like Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Cory Booker, Christian Gillibrand, just name a few, show their hand. There has been many Democrats who were not willing to endorse Zohran Mamdani after they had promoted, for example, vote for blue, no matter who. And then they right now are fighting and saying, hey, the will of the Democratic voters in Virginia was not listened to. But they did the same thing with the citizens and electorate in New York City who rejected the previous mayor of New York City, who rejected Cuomo when he was running, and to put their support and their votes behind Mamdani. They villainized him with the Republicans. And it was really sickening because right now, what Mamdani has proven on the Democratic side, and just for politicians in general, and I think both sides, the Democrat establishment, these corporate Democrats and these Republicans in power, did not want Mamdani to win because his policies, within the time he's been in office, he's been able to get rid of a $12 billion deficit without increasing taxes on the everyday New Yorkers and without cutting programs. Because when you look at the Democratic Party, there are individuals who will increase taxes in order to pay for these programs, right? And a lot of people get upset with it. On the Republican side, there are individuals who will cut programs in order to justify lowering your taxes, but you end up screwed because then you're without support and you don't have the government working for you at all. It's just working for where the money is, and that's corporations. But what Mamdani did is showed these Democrats who say you need to increase taxes in order to get what you want, and maybe there'll be a little bit of increased taxes, but putting taxpayer dollars to work, but he did it without right now. Look, they've been lying to you the whole time in the sense that there's other ways to do this. The Republicans who say you need to cut, and you can't have these things, you can't afford child care, you can't do this, have also been lying to you. And they're really upset that progressive policies are showing that. Now, in the Democratic Party, you have the progressives really with establishment Democrats fighting them hand and foot, right? And it's really telling because you saw individuals like Christian Gillibrand be more willing to attack Al Green, who recently lost his primary, when he stood up for his constituents about their concerns about Medicare cuts and Medicaid, right? Health insurance cuts on the Senate floor. Christian Gillibrand was more willing to condemn him than at the time she was willing to fight against Republicans and Donald Trump. Now, right now, I've seen videos of her kind of, doing her political maneuvers in the sense of like in these committees, being really strong in that. But a lot of that is just words because when in these moments, put your money where your mouth is, right? As they say, your actions speak louder than words. And those actions were really telling. You have some Democrats who are willing to have progressive candidates lose. They don't care because they feel like it's worth it and let a Republican win. And what that tells me is that these Democrats don't care about the electorate, don't care about what suffering you're going to go through. They only care about their interest because these corporate Democrats don't want the system to change, just like these Republicans. They want to have rich corporations be in power, to take their money, to be able to trade stocks, and not really to do much for the American people. What we've seen in the system with Republicans is that the system can work quick when they want it to. Because when Black Americans were targeted, someone pointed this out in their video, two white guys, right? And did a really good job of it, illustrating the hypocrisy. We're always told as electorate, it's going to take time. What you want, it takes years. Progress takes time. But in order to hurt people, to go after Black Americans, that can happen overnight. And that shows that they could do it the whole time. They could have worked on providing programs that help us, providing a better healthcare system, providing for the American people, addressing our concerns and needs. But they didn't want to do it because it wasn't motivating to them. They weren't getting anything out of it. One of my other concerns with the Democratic Party is that as far as marginalized individuals, right, and I want to point this out, the reason why the Democrats have such a low approval rating is because the electorate is so unhappy with the current corporate Democrats. We've seen their corruption in a time where Trump is in power, and it's very blatant who they stand by. There are Democrats fighting, okay? So, like I was saying, one of my concerns with the Democratic Party is they take a lot of minority votes, right? And they take them for granted. And it's not like I'm going to be voting for Republicans who are obviously corrupt, but I get worried that with the Supreme Court decision, what they're going to do is say, yeah, we don't need the Black vote anymore. And what they're going to do is throw them under the bus. And they're going to try to fight for the same electorate that Republicans are, which is not the majority of the country. So when individuals are talking about where's my representation, and all of these other things, the largest population here is independents, and they are not represented by either party. Now, polling shows that they support Trump more than Democrats, which I find concerning, even though they're moving away from him. But looking at the current system that we have here and seeing how these Democrats are willing to throw their own base under the bus just to win, right? I've seen some people say the electorate is willing to sacrifice Black Americans in order to win. I find that disgusting. I find that distasteful, to be honest, because if you're going to throw the most vulnerable individuals under the bus, don't come back to us crying without any doing work and showing us that you can be trusted again and expect us to forgive you immediately when you find out that those people that you lied in bed with betrayed you. These corporations, right? It's just a backstabbing. They made the electorate turn against you. They villainized you. And you feel bad? Well, you threw us under the bus. So I guess if you were looking for my concerns with the Democratic Party, there it is, right? I am not going to deny, just to reach middle ground, or to appease somebody, I should say, because I do want to meet somewhere where we can have discussions. And when I say the middle, I'm not going to be like, you know what, there's both sides to everything. Sometimes there's not. But I cannot deny the corruption on the Republican side. And I can't deny the individuals on the Democrat side who are corrupt. But the whole party on the Republican side has been just corrupted. And we have been conditioned to be fighting against each other instead of standing with each other. If we can unite around policies and get these Democrats and Republicans to actually fight for us because they fear us more than other countries, fear us more than their own rich friends and corporations, that would be a complete change for the better for us. I think that there's a few things that I have been disgusted by recently. If you want like a further deep dive into the Democratic side, I was confused and insulted a little bit when Joe Biden's wife said when she watched that debate where Joe Biden did terribly, she said, I think I was concerned that he was having a stroke. Now, if that was a real concern, right? and hopefully, I mean, she knows. I mean, she is someone who's highly educated, I believe has a doctorate, right? That the first thing that you need to do with somebody who has a stroke is when you recognize the symptoms is make sure that they get immediate attention. So if you see him on stage and you think he's having that, why didn't you stop it, right? If you really had those concerns. Now, it may have been for political reasons or what have you, but I don't understand why also at the end of that debate, she said to Joe Biden, "You did a good job." And the other area I find questionable is that she said she had not seen him like this before, when many people were pointing out the concerns. Now you have on the opposite end, Donald Trump in power, and he's showing cognitive decline. And he's going to the doctor multiple times for cognitive tests. And he's saying to us, the tests were hard. No other president has done this. I'm acing them. And then when he gives the example of the test, he's like, it's a picture of a lion. I had to point out a picture of a lion. And everyone in the audience, I'm not sure, hopefully they're not saying this, is saying, oh, he's right. Picture of lion? I'm not sure if I could identify that. That's hard. I'm like, what? Right? And I think that there was a reporter who did the cognitive test and showed actually it's not that difficult, right? And that is concerning. And again, what people did on the Democratic side by blindly staying loyal to Biden, and not every Democrat, by the way, there was a ton. And the Democratic side, I will say, you know, we get accused, just as case in point, for being involved in purity politics. Like the minute that one person, a politician, does something wrong, they turn against them like they never knew them before. And then at the same time, outside people will say, look, you're blindly loyal. There is a portion that is blindly loyal to Trump, or not to Trump, to our politicians. But there is another side, to be honest, that will turn against them the minute that they do something wrong or target other individuals and show that they're incompetent. I don't think that you have that, to be honest, right now with the current Republican Party. I think there was maybe a time it was possible. I'm not sure, but definitely not right now, because Donald Trump keeps on doing terrible things and everyone fears him. Everyone fears him. And it's so confusing. And it's so confusing too, as in Texas, people target James Tallarico, and I find this so confusing. They go, he's a vegan. Look how unmanly he is, attacking him because they think that he's gay, right? And then people going out, by the way, that's a lie. He eats meat. What does it even matter if he eats meat or not? I don't understand. In a time like this, when you're concerned about gas prices, you're going to be actually concerned whether someone eats meat or not. I'm not in Texas. I'm not sure if this is an actual thing where people will get upset about this, but I'm like, if you're going for these low tax, and supposedly these Republican leaderships have fed the narrative of being against identity politics and all these things, why are you attacking vegans? Like, you've run out of people to attack and you can't find anything else. You're going to say vegan? I don't understand. I'm sorry, vegans, you're being attacked right now. And then, you know, to say all these lies about him is really interesting. And to call him, like, I saw a meme saying, protect your kids. Protect your kids. Why are you now acting like these politicians, that you're acting now like you care about pedophilia? When you defended, you know, Donald Trump and his hiding of the Epstein files and the protecting of other pedophiles and villainizing the women have come out talking about Jeffrey Epstein. The hypocrisy is real. And I hope people can see that as politicians, whether they're on the left and right now on the right, who are blatantly doing this, they can see through the bullshit, right? Why do we idolize the rich? Because like individuals like Elon Musk are like, oh, Elon Musk supports him. Or like, for example, Trump support him, so I must. No, you don't. You can make a decision for yourself. Why trust a man who only cares about himself? You know? So I guess in closing, because I don't want to make this longer than it already is, let me know why you voted for Donald Trump. And I ask out of curiosity. I'm not here to blame you. Also, let me know what made you change your mind about Donald Trump, if you did. What makes you feel in opposition to Democrats? And I also want us to be careful as I want us to do this exercise. I want us to think about, as we're talking about each other, if you're saying, oh, because they're woke, what is wokeness? Wokeness is being aware of injustice. Oh, because they're DEI. DEI is making sure that any of our systems which were excluding people, making it harder for them to gain employment because of biases, whether conscious or not, were being removed. So the best qualifying individual, regardless of their race, regardless of their sex, regardless of their sexuality, veteran status, age, economic status, was getting an equal playing field based on their credentials. So I want us to think, as we're kind of using these labels and just going libs or libtards, as people call them, to step away from that language and that hate. I don't know why people like to make other people feel bad, right? Like to call them crazy. And as I look at this, I've seen people post online saying, look at these liberals, look how crazy they are, these freaks. And they're showing people who are little people. They're showing people who have different opinions. And yes, they show individuals at the most extreme, but they have the right to their opinions. And you see people on the right at the same time who are blindly loyal to Trump, wearing those bandages, believing in him, giving everything that they have for him. And I feel bad because Trump doesn't care about them. And that's what I feel bad about. I was like, you are sacrificing your identity, your morals, everything for a man that doesn't care about you. One thing that I have come to learn is I never really celebrated celebrities. I have recently lost any connection to brand loyalty. I'm a gamer, was loyal to Xbox. Then I saw how they raised the prices on their consumers, didn't really care. It was a business. I was like, what an idiot I was, thinking a business cared about me. Psh, what? They don't care about making money. And politicians, I've never really been completely loyal to. Do I like Mandami? Yeah. But do I recognize he's a human being and he's going to make mistakes? Yes. And there's times where, yeah, he'll have to be called out on any mistakes he makes, just like any other politician. So I don't have a loyalty to any individual. We're humans. I make mistakes. But I will say this. I want the room to grow. I want to give them room to grow as long as they're showing the work, not just saying, I'm sorry, let me move on. Well, no, you got to show the work behind it. You got to show that you actually meant what you said. So again, I'm not going to condemn somebody completely, but I'm also not going to say other people should trust and forgive individuals that they don't want to. Because I understand how many Black Americans are like, no, not for me. I'm not going to do that. I understand, because I imagine that they have trusted many people either through generations or themselves and have been let down and betrayed. So you can't blame them when they have facts that prove otherwise. So the only way, if you're upset about that you're going to be able to change their mind is you're going to have to do lots of work to change it. And it may not be quick. It may not be ever, right, that you get to see it, but it needs to be done in order to show that we can be trusted, that we have good intentions. My fellow Hispanic community, though I did not vote for Trump, right, there's a problem in our Hispanic community, how we can throw each other under the bus, how we can say, oh, it's not me that they're talking about who are criminals. It's not me, it's the other ones. And then they'll come for us and we act like, oh my God. And we expect other people to stand up for us. Why? Because we fed into an environment that just likes to villainize people. So let's have a heart. I know it's long closing. Let's treat each other with respect. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Hopefully my other videos will be shorter. And thank you for bearing with me as I am blind and can't even see you guys. So if I went cross-eyed, you know why. All right. Goodbye.